This is the Lighting Fires podcast, supported by Henley Business School.
I've always been a firm believer in coaching. I do a lot of learning. I like to read, and I've got a very inquisitive mind. But I also recognise that to improve and to be better, learn from those around you who either have done that or have the necessary skills to help take you on that path. And there's also the accountability side of it as well, because I don't want to let you down as my coach and as my friend as well.
Welcome to the Lighting Fires podcast. My name is Julie Williams and I'm a coach. I have a master's in coaching and behavioural change, over 10 years of running my own coaching practice, and 15 years in marketing leadership roles, including Accenture, where I worked with Microsoft. In my work, I gain the benefit of walking with people through their lives for a short time. So on this podcast, you'll get to hear from people experiencing key moments of change in their business and personal lives. We'll hear what lit their fires and the techniques that created significant shifts. I hope you find their story inspiring. In this episode, we'll meet Mark Schmull, the Managing Director of Arrow Planning, a town planning company based in High Wycombe, just outside of London. One member of Mark's team recently told me that he is by far the best planner that he has ever met. Mark is an expert on the Greenbelt, a ring of countryside just outside of London. Mark and I met at Christmas drinks in 2019 and went on to work together during the national lockdown. I set up a mastermind group of 5 business leaders to help them navigate the challenges that the lockdown was bringing. In this episode, we talk about the power of having a business or a work community behind you. We discuss imposter syndrome and also taking risks as a business owner. I hope you enjoy this conversation between Mark and myself. Welcome to the Lighting Fires podcast. Today I have Mark Schmull on the show. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself now.
Great, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you for having me here. Delighted to be here. So, I'm Mark Schmull. I'm Managing Director of Arrow Planning, which is a town planning consultancy in High Wycombe. I founded the business nearly 7 years ago now, and it's been quite a journey over that time, upwards mostly, but obviously plenty of challenges throughout that time as well. But yeah, it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to the future as well to see what that brings.
So we first met during lockdown, didn't we?
It was just before.
Was it just before?
It was Christmas drinks in the Christmas just before lockdown.
Right, yes, yeah, that's right. And then we went on to create a mastermind group together.
Yes. Yeah.
So that my intention around that was, as we went into lockdown, I felt that there was a lot of business owners feeling really isolated, including myself actually. And I felt like something needed to be done, particularly for some of the people and the clients that I knew. And so I thought I could show some leadership in setting up a group. So it was an opportunity for us to get together on a regular basis, have a confidential space that was kind of really open for us to explore our business challenges at a really pressured time of change, where clients were changing their needs and what they needed from us as businesses, and we were getting a lot of conflicting advice as well. So that was really kind of where we started, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was, I'm very grateful for what you did in taking that initiative to bring that forward, because it was a very difficult time, and it was a great community feeling that you created for us at that point.
Yeah, and I benefited a lot from that community as well. But maybe before we get into the coaching, maybe you could just tell us a bit about your backstory.
Yes, yeah. So I've been working in the property industry for roughly 20 years, but I didn't plan to go into that. I sort of fell into it, really. I did geography at university, and when I sort of graduated, I did some travelling around South America, and I got a temping job at the local council to where I was. And it happened to be in the planning department, and I started off just in admin, doing filing and so on, and then got offered a role in the planning team as a sort of trainee planner. And that's really how I started. So like I say, I just sort of fell into that. did that for a while and got the opportunity to do a master's course whilst working at the council. So I started that, but was getting quite ambitious in terms of my career, sort of early 20s, and sort of thinking about where's this going to take me. And the authority I was working for, certainly, at that time was very much glass ceilings. You were stuck in a position where if you wanted to progress, you had to wait for somebody to leave. And until they did, you weren't really going to progress beyond a certain point. So I took the decision to move into the private sector at that stage, and I joined a company called Hives Planning in Reading and worked there for 9 years or so. And I was very fortunate that it was a small business, but that were working on a real mixture of projects, particularly large-scale projects. So I got really good exposure to a range of planning issues, but actually also business issues as well at the same time. And during that period, about a year or so after I joined, it was the sort of the recession around sort of 2008 or so. So I'd sort of joined in a buoyant time, and then sort of a year or two later, seeing how that had quickly changed to a very difficult time within the the global economy as well as within our industry. And that really sort of gave me that sort of exposure beyond just the looking at the day-to-day of town planning and what I do in my day job, to actually running a business and what that involves and the decisions that have to be taken. Sort of fast forward a few years, and I got to a point again where I wanted to progress, and actually the managing director was retiring, and there was a sort of change in ownership structure, and actually ended up becoming part of a much larger organisation. Going back to your theme about change, it was actually a time in my life where I was looking at, I was approaching parenthood. It was not long before my daughter was to be born, and I was also just questioning actually whether I enjoyed my work and what I was doing. And it's really one of my fundamental principles is people should enjoy what they do at work, because you spend so much time there. So I did start looking at other career paths.
So what were you thinking then at that moment?
Good question. I did not really know. I felt at the time probably a bit lost and not quite sure where my place was. I was chatting to friends, and I've always had quite a strong interest in sport and health and fitness. So I had discussions with a couple of friends that were looking at football coaching and looking at starting a football coaching business on the side for young people. But the fact that I was sort of looking at starting a family at that point was a very strong factor in my mind. I had to be thinking about income, the risk of starting a new business. There's the financial implications, but particularly within sport and health and fitness and so on, it's quite well known as an industry where actually it's very, very difficult to make any money from.
Do you know, I didn't know this about you, this nearly that Arrow Planning might not have ever existed, and that you could have become a football coach or had a business in that field. So then you started...
So I didn't then start Arrow. Okay. So I had at that point an opportunity came up to join another planning consultancy who were opening a new office in Reading. And so I took that as a chance to see what it's like to effectively help build a business at a point. And that certainly started my mindset going back to that business side that I'd learned in the previous company, and that opportunity to understand how you need to manage a business and the budget and so on. But it was within a larger structure, so I had that comfort of, firstly, I had a senior director above me who was the lead for the office, and secondly, we were part of a sort of a 200 plus employee company that was on a very sound financial base, so we had that support at the back end in terms of human resources and accounts and other offices and people that we could speak to learn lessons from, really. So I joined there, and actually that certainly reignited some of my sort of passion. And I think in that 2-year period I was there, I learned a huge amount, much more than maybe in the sort of preceding couple of years where maybe I'd got a bit stagnant in terms of what I was doing and the opportunities that were around me.
Yeah. Talking about learning about how to set up a business, was there one or two standout lessons from that?
Yes, I mean, like I said, I was very fortunate because there was that wider infrastructure, but I think one of the key things was patience. It was very good to be within a business that recognised that this is a new office, it's a new area. They recognise that these things, particularly within the property industry and planning, where a lot of projects do take a long time, that there needs to be a realistic lead in that regard, rather than, right, if by 6 months of running you're not turning a profit, then we need to think about a different strategy or someone else. Let's understand the reasons, but not just put undue and unnecessary pressure on ourselves.
I think patience is actually a really interesting point, isn't it, about setting up a business? And obviously you've got to have the financial kind of confidence to be patient when you're starting out. Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Okay, so what was next?
So, as I said, I like to do things a bit difficult. So I started the role within that business, and about a month later my daughter was born. So I went straight into a new role, a new job, and straight into having my first child as well. So I thought, timed that perfectly. But again, I was fortunate. It was a very supportive business. My sort of senior director, Dan, who I worked with, was fantastic from day one, and really sort of helped me through that, and had a young family himself. So appreciated what it's like. But yeah, so I did that for 2 years. But I started to get itchy feet, and it wasn't so much itchy feet in terms of I was unhappy there, but I've always stayed in contact with the managing director from Hives, who has been as much as a sort of a boss. He's also been a friend and a father figure as well, and very supportive. And he sort of moved into retirement and had long been saying to me, you should set up your own consultancy. It's something he'd done sort of 20 years previous in creating Hives, and he very much was suggesting that and supporting that and prompting me. And we went out for a boozy lunch one day, and it really got my mind thinking about it.
So I'm just thinking about how important it is to have a mentor, isn't it? Or somebody who's perhaps been there and done that, or is at least on your side and is willing to support you and challenge your thinking, and perhaps make introductions where possible, that kind of... I quite often think about the idea of the personal boardroom, which is an excellent book, by the way, where when you set up a business, or if you're working in a kind of corporate role, to have a bunch of people around you, almost kind of, you can make it formal, or you can just imagine that they're in these roles and they never actually know that you've kind of picked them for these roles, but how different people can fulfill different supporting roles for you. You might have somebody who's your energizer, somebody who's your challenger, people that you need around you when you're taking on a big role like that.
Yes, it's crucial, and I'm a huge believer in the people around you shape you and mould you, for good and for bad. And if you're fortunate to have mentor figures, parental figures within your life that can take on that role, then you're very, very fortunate. And it's something I've been very lucky that I've benefited from that externally. I had a difficult at times upbringing compared to some, with my sort of parents getting divorced when I was quite young, but my relationship with my father's never been the strongest at all. And whilst he's always been supportive in his way, it's been very much focused around his needs rather than my needs, and his perception of what I need in terms of that support rather than necessarily what I actually do need. I remember when I sort of started the business, and even to this day, he never really understood it, and he was just all focused on the financial side of it and why are you doing that, rather than being, this is a fantastic thing, well done, and encouraging of it. And that's because it's different to what he knew and what he knows. So I was fortunate to have that support in other places. Andrew was one of them, and he very much did that when I worked with him previously as well, and gave me the right opportunities to sort of grow within there, and as you say, the introductions to others as well. And that brought me on then to going for lunch with him and a sort of a friend, or somebody who is now a friend but also a client, and again a bit of a mentor to me, Stephen, who between the two of them effectively put me on that path to setting up Arrow.
If you're listening to this and you're interested in training as a coach, I can highly recommend the Professional Certificate in Executive Coaching, or even the Masters at Henley Business School. It is the best investment I have made in myself and my business. The course is led by research, so it has academic rigour, and the tools and techniques you learn are highly practical. You get the opportunities to practice, you build confidence, I also gained friendships for life, a community that's continued to support me. I can highly recommend it. So if you decide to take the plunge and contact Henley about the certificate programme, do mention the Lighting Fires podcast. So when I first met you, how many people were in the team?
Just me.
I thought so.
It was.
Yeah.
So when we first met, it was just me. And then as we moved into lockdown and when we sort of started, I'd just taken that decision and just on the 1st of March 2020, taken on my first team member, Rob, at associate level as well, so senior level. And 2 weeks later, watched the world change dramatically.
So I guess that brings us on to the coaching work that we did together. And we've done quite a bit of team coaching since, but specifically we're talking about this mastermind group. So it was called Ignite Your Business. So with a real focus on supporting one another and looking at our challenges and our opportunities and challenging each other a little bit sometimes as well. But the group was able to kind of share their wisdom, and actually we had a lot of humour as well, which I think was really important. I really looked forward to our meetings. So our first 6 sessions actually were really in that kind of setup. It went on to evolve a bit after that. So at that moment in time, why did you come to coaching? What was it you were hoping to achieve from that?
I've always been a firm believer in coaching. You know, I do a lot of learning. I like to read, and I've got a very inquisitive mind. But I also recognise that to improve and to be better, learn from those around you who either have done that or have the necessary skills to help take you on that path. And there's also the accountability side of it as well. You can hold yourself to account, but actually it's a great help to me to have someone like yourself there who then can hold me to account, to make suggestions or make sure I'm on a certain path, but then ensure that I'm doing that, or that it just gives me that little bit of extra motivation, because I don't want to let you down as my coach and as my friend as well. So that draws me to it as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And in terms of business challenges, was there a specific goal that you had in your mind that you wanted to achieve through the coaching and the community?
Yes, definitely. So it was a time, again, it was another transition, because when I set up Arrow nearly 7 years ago now, I wasn't sure whether actually I wanted to grow the business or whether actually I wanted to just be on myself and sort of earn what I needed to earn and work on the projects I wanted to earn. But I did that for a couple of years, and I got to a point where the business was working well, it was being successful, and I was turning down work. And so I got to a sort of a stick or twist moment, and I joined a growth program, which was sort of funded program through Buckinghamshire Business First, and that opened up my eyes to the opportunities around growth and the support networks there. And then I met a number of other business owners and a sort of community there. So when we first met and started working together, I'd sort of spent the last year doing that. I'd just taken on Rob, and I was at that point again of, right, this is a very difficult situation at that exact time because of what was going on in the world. But equally, having just brought someone in, do I then want to grow beyond that position as well, or that same conversation of, do I just stick with the two of us and start there? And through this support network that we'd established through the mastermind sessions and through what we're exploring together as a group, it allowed me that chance to grapple with that issue and understand, what did that mean? What were others in this group who also were small business owners and actually sort of growing at the same time? What were they sort of thinking about it? And for us to all push each other with, again, your sort of guidance and steering of the ship through there. And that really helped me then focus and think about, right, what is my plan? Am I growing? And took the decision to certainly do that. And then how do I do that? And what's the team dynamic and the people and the personalities? But what am I trying to get from this? What do I want Arrow to be? Because that then helps shape who I want to come and be part of Arrow as well. Yeah.
And I think as a business owner, I've seen this a lot with a lot of my clients, those decisions to start hiring more people and to grow, there's so much anxiety around that, isn't there? And the decision, do you hire somebody really senior who can potentially bring a network with them and they can do their own business development, but obviously at a higher cost to the business, or do you bring in somebody much more junior who then you have to invest a lot of time and effort to bring them along? So it's a really pivotal moment, isn't it?
It is, definitely. And it's also thinking about the culture, particularly with a small business. Personalities can be very strong and very well reflected, and when you're a much larger business, people can, for good reasons and bad reasons, either be lost within that mix or drowned out, which, you know, can be a negative, but it can help if for whatever reason you get the wrong person in the team. But with your small business, it's crucial. And so as well as a financial decision, it's then how does that change the nature of what your offer is? How does that person come in change how you might want to do things, and what can you learn from that person as well? And it doesn't matter whether they're 20 years experience or straight from university. They have experience, they have views and things that they can bring to the table, and so it's recognising what sort of character do I want to bring in, and how do I want to learn from them as well, but how do I want them to understand what I'm trying to do, and what becomes the louder voice while still being able to listen at the same time.
Yeah, and I remember one of the themes that we spoke about quite a lot for you was about how do you bring the team on, how do you listen to them more, how do you what is that team culture that you're trying to develop? Yeah, and that's continued to be a big theme for Arrow Planning.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you feeling stuck and need some help moving forwards? At Lighting Fires, I work with business leaders, future leaders and their teams to ignite their full leadership potential. Whether you're a business owner or leading in an organisation, we can work together to create a programme tailored to your priorities. Throughout our coaching together, I see my clients' confidence and capabilities grow as they gain a greater understanding of how they work, learn to make quicker decisions, and develop a vision for their role and a plan on how to get there. Through the challenges and the breakthroughs, you'll have me by your side. Get in touch on LinkedIn or email me, julie@lightingfires.co.uk. So are there, when you think back to that mastermind session, either in those first 6 sessions or as it kind of developed more into a kind of leadership program, are there kind of key moments, like light bulb moments or moments of change, or something just shifted for you that had impact?
Yes, certainly. So I think that there was the first sort of 6 sessions or so I felt were very much as a sort of, in some ways, a collective support network for us all at the time. It was a chance for us to come together, share our fears, and actually it was, in a nice way, it's reassuring to know I'm not alone, I'm not the only one having these problems, and it helped me focus my mind more to recognise, okay, we're in this together a bit, and there's others here who I can support and who are willing to support me as well. So that was, that was a real positive mindset shift through doing that in that first period then. And I think then moving on beyond that, we covered as a group some very tough and honest topics. I can remember conversations that you sort of offered where you said, are there things people want to bring to the table that we can then focus on going forward? And for example, I remember leading a session or sort of asking you to sort of focus on imposter syndrome, because that's something I've struggled with plenty of times throughout my career and my personal life. And again, through working together and sharing with the others in the team and through your sort of guidance, that realisation that we all go through this and we all have our different techniques for dealing with it, and the ability to recognise that and talk through that has been a real help, and something I keep reflecting and reminding myself of now, and sharing and talking through with others as well, particularly within my team. I was thinking back actually about
that particular session because it seemed to have quite a profound impact on at least a few of us in that call. And I remember you talking about, do I deserve the seat at the table in some of the meetings that I'm having? And I think at the time you were getting involved in a very large project as well that could have a huge influence on the growth of the business. And I was just sat there listening to you thinking, oh my gosh, Mark, I had no idea actually that you felt like this. And to me, you so deserve the seat at the table. So for you to show that vulnerability, I think, was really powerful for everybody else because it made they could be a bit more courageous and talk about their similar feelings.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that, and it is. I've shared it with others at times, and again, I've had a similar that sort of surprise. And I am a confident person, definitely, but I still struggle with these challenges, and there are plenty of times when I still question: do I deserve to be here? Should I be here? Am I the right person to be here? Do I know what I'm doing? But yeah, I'd be worried if I wasn't questioning myself in that regard, to be honest. Yeah,
thank you. I'm just going to talk briefly about a conversation we had before we started recording this morning, where we were talking about how business owners or people who are getting into really senior corporate positions often experience some imposter syndrome around dealing with the numbers and the financial statements. And you were telling me a brilliant story about Richard Branson, actually.
Yes, yeah. So I listened to Stephen Bartlett's podcast, and he had Richard Branson on. Richard Branson was very honest about how he's a very successful businessman, done multiple businesses, and I think something like 20 years into his career he was in a board meeting and they were talking about accounts, and I'm probably getting this slightly wrong, but effectively what he was saying was there was a discussion around turnover and he had to ask what turnover was because he didn't know. And so this is a person who's hugely successful, lots of businesses that have turned massive profits, lots of finance, well into his career, and yet he doesn't know about the numbers and the finance at all, and what are some of the more common accountancy terms rather than specialist ones.
Thank you. And any other moments of change? I mean, one thing I just wanted to reflect on is that at one point in the later series of sessions that we did, we looked at Belbin team roles. For people who don't know, it's a kind of psychometric test where you can discover what typical role you take in a team, whether you might be something called a plant, which can be very much about bringing lots of ideas, or lots of people have heard the phrase completer finisher, so somebody who's really good at actually finishing projects. That's not something I'm so good at. But I remember you coming out as a coordinator, and somebody, I mean, that role actually tends to be somebody who is very calm, can take almost a kind of chairperson role in a situation. And that actually, I mean, the coaching term is parallel process, because we were talking about it, but I was seeing it in action at the same time. That there was one slightly challenging situation came up, and you really did act like the chairperson, and just kind of being very calm and smoothing things, and it was just really interesting to see you take that role, which to me just shows how much you deserve the seat at many tables that you sit at.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. I was looking back at the sort of Belbin work, and it is something I've done a lot in my life without necessarily realising. And so when we did that work together, it did bring that realisation to the surface. I look back at sports teams, and I've quite often filled a captain's role, whether being given the captaincy or actually just defaulting to doing that, regardless of whether I've got the armband there. And it's something I've developed as a skill and worked hard on in terms of my professional career as well, and recognising it is something I naturally fall to, but I still need to do a lot of the work around that, and particularly on the listening side, and recognising when to listen and when to speak. And I don't always get that right, but to give that opportunity for others to go. But the calmness is something I've had to work very hard on as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of us who appear to be calm are quite often like swans kind of paddling really fast under the water. So any other kind of key moments of change, either during coaching or outside? Often other things have a massive influence on us, don't they?
Yes, they do, definitely. I mean, certainly, again, just through the coaching, it's given me that confidence to build and grow the business, really. We're now up to a team of 8 of us, and that's sort of grown massively within the last 2 years mostly. And the work through the coaching has been really beneficial for the whole team, because there's members of the team that maybe didn't quite understand how others worked or liked to work or liked to communicate. And I know from having done particularly our first sort of wider team session and having some discussions with members of the team afterwards, that sort of light bulb moment came as a result of doing that coaching work together, because they suddenly understood a different perspective, or that when someone was interacting in one fashion, that wasn't about them, that was more about how that person communicates or doesn't communicate. And so it's then thinking, how can we as a team work more effectively together?
Yeah. So it is often just that opportunity to get to know people a little bit better, and how they like to communicate and who they are creates such a depth of understanding, and then we can also adapt our own behaviour a bit, can't we, in that respect? Yeah. Okay, so at this point I'm going to offer you to pick a question out of the hat. So I've got a set of questions that I would like to offer people, but there's going to be an element of surprise here. So would you like to pick a question?
I will go for a lucky dip and see what we have. Right. Which career or leadership myth would you like to dispel? That's a really good question. I think what I'd sort of choose is about the leader knows what they're doing. I think is a massive one, because there's a lot of the time you just don't know what you're doing. But
aren't we all making it up as we go along, really?
Yeah, it is. It's very much so. I think it's having that skill to be open and recognise that, and then think about, I don't know the answer, but I know where to find the answer. Be that from getting assistance, guidance, coaching, to look in a certain area. But actually, most of the time, you'll find most leaders don't necessarily know what they're doing, or have this clear direction and vision that they know where they're going, despite how it might appear from the outside.
Yeah. And you're reminding me of another client I was working with recently, who said that the plan is everything and the plan is nothing. So as long as you have a plan, then you can just throw it away, because something's always going to come up that you're not expecting. But it gives you probably the confidence to start something, doesn't it? So yeah, I like that phrase. I'm adopting that phrase. So what would you now say to somebody who's, if you kind of rewind back to your beginnings setting up Arrow, is there any advice that you would offer to somebody in that position?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is go for it. Yeah. Is 100% just go for it. I've a very close friend of mine, quite often we go mountain biking and things like that, and we quite often have a phrase of what's the worst that could happen. And yes, you can go into a mindset, particularly if we, say we're mountain biking, well, I could fall off and I could break my leg and so on. But actually the chances are pretty slim. And when you rationalise those thoughts, so again, when you start up a business, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's going to fail. But as long as you've set yourself up in a respectful manner, that you're not putting your if you've got a family, putting them at undue risk, then that's the worst that can happen, is it just doesn't work out and you go and get a job. When I started Arrow, I didn't burn any bridges in my previous role, and I was very much of a, if this does not work, then I'll just go and apply for a job. So my first piece of advice would be to go for it, and the second is be ambitious, but don't put undue pressure on yourself. When you start a business, in my experience and from speaking to others, you don't need all the bells and whistles and the toys and gadgets. again, most of my first year, my expenses were basically for a laptop for the business and my professional insurance cover. And I was sat in my effectively garden shed. Didn't need a certain car or anything like that. I didn't need certain clothes, gadgets, software, things like that. Kept it really lean. And then as I worked out what was effective and useful. And actually the most useful things for me were advice. It was accountant, it was experience of friends, and then in due time coaching and so on. And that's actually where I put my resources, rather than necessarily having the new latest technology or phone or a nice car to impress certain people or anything like that. I wanted to impress people with the quality of my work and my advice.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. And I think this whole idea of go for it, I mean, exactly, what is the worst that can happen? You're going to learn so much along the way, whatever happens. And that's brilliant, kind of rich experience, life experience, isn't it? So I think, as we said earlier, if you've got some supportive people around you, that feels really key. To me, certainly I felt that when I started up Lighting Fires, and I've continued to have very supportive clients like yourself, and I feel really grateful to have found this kind of community of people who kind of keep pushing me forward too. Yeah, it's great. So I guess my final question is, what's next for you?
It's a very good question. I do have some plans for the future. At the moment, it's very much about building on what we have with Arrow. I've got a fantastic team there. We've recently launched the sort of vision and values with the team that's been really, really well received. And so my real focus for certainly the next 6 months or so is consolidating that, making sure we as a team are very clear on our purpose, why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing that, and then how we're communicating that to clients and on projects and to the outside world, and to really living within those. So that's my focus for now, and then after that we'll see what happens.
Thank you. So Mark, I'm wondering whether you might come back and do another interview at some point in the future, and we might be able to reflect on what you've done, but also potentially we could do a bit of kind of live coaching as well that might be interesting for people to listen to.
Yes, I'd be delighted to. I'd love to do that.
So is there anything more that you'd like to say before we finish?
I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity today. It's been brilliant, lots of fun talking about this, and it's the run up to this in terms of the chance to just think back and reflect on all of this time, really, not just the career time but the last few years and what I've been learning. It's great because you don't always take time to do that, so I'm grateful to have had that opportunity to do that as well.
Yes, yeah, and so we continue to learn together, don't we?
We do.
It's all right. Thank you, Mark. Listening back to my interview with Mark, the phrase "no man or person is an island" comes to my mind. We rarely achieve anything in life on our own. Like Olympic athletes who have a whole team around them of coaches, physios, nutritionists, and the support and encouragement of family and friends, many of us need a team in some shape or form. So these are my 2 top tips for this episode. The first is to think about mentors. Sometimes there will be people who very naturally fulfill these roles in our lives. They may have already achieved what you'd like to achieve, or they may be successful in another field. They might have a lot of learnings to impart or introductions to make, or can challenge your thinking. A really useful book is Who is in Your Personal Boardroom by Amanda Scott. She helps you think about all the important roles you may need to support you in your endeavour, and encourages you to have those conversations with people. My second tip is mapping out your network of support on paper or on a digital whiteboard, using diagrams, images, symbols and words to map out the people, the books, podcasts, perhaps the times of day that inspire you, and any other activities that help you grow and learn and develop in your role or business. By mapping these out, you can see what are the key foundations, what can give you momentum to go forward, and also identify potential blockers. When I learned about this technique at Henley Business School, I mapped out my own business as I was setting it up and the network that I needed. This had real impact on lighting my own fires. If you'd like to find out how we could work together, you can visit my website www.lightingfires.co.uk, email me at julie@lightingfires.co.uk, or contact me on LinkedIn, Julie Williams, MSc. If you found this podcast helpful, please leave a 5-star rating so others just like you can find me and benefit from these stories. Thank you for listening to the Lighting Fires podcast. I'll be back soon with more conversations with my wonderful clients reflecting on their coaching journeys.